Hi, this is Tony English again, talking about the existence of God. I'm going to sort of float into more of a theological discussion today, but down the road, this helps with evidence towards the existence of God, I think, in the long run. Um, what I want to talk about today is molinism. And I want to tell you a story. Back in the mid 90s, I used to listen to a talk show program that was a Christian based talk show program. They would talk theology a lot. And in the Bible, there's verses that seem to call Christians predestined and elect and chosen by God before the foundation of the world. And then there's verses that seem like it's up to the individual to decide freely to, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and today is the day of the Lord, make a decision. These verses seem to contradict. And so there's on the one side, the predestination people call themselves Calvinists, 5-point Calvinists. I'm not going to get into that right now, but they're very passionate about their belief that God chose us and that we have absolutely no power, that we are predestined, we don't have a choice, we're basically blessed by God. All the glory goes to God for choosing us. We have no right to even take credit for deciding to follow God, because that was also predestined. That's the one view. The other view, they call it Armenian view, or there's some other names for it, but it doesn't matter. That view is more you are freely chosen, you freely choose to be in the group of elect, is the way they look at it. So all the verses about election have to do with the church, and then as an individual, you can join the elect or not freely. And I think both sides have really, really good arguments, and it was really kind of daunting for me to try and figure it out. I'm kind of a skeptic on everything, so I always like to find out what makes sense. And I had several preachers say, this is a mystery, don't think about it, both sides are true. um, they contradict, but in the world of God it doesn't matter. And that just drove me nuts, because I need to have things make sense. So one day I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, what if God knew before he created the universe what people would freely do? And so he had a choice of all the possible universes to choose from, and some of them had people who were robots, and some had free people, and there was different choices that could be made. And he knew what would happen. If we think of God as the greatest possible being, it's impossible for him not to know what would happen in the future. At least that's one view. There's some people who claim open theism and things, that God doesn't know what's going to happen and it's impossible for him to know. But I think it makes more sense that through his all-knowing knowledge of every particular atom, that he knows what would cause what. Just like we know what our kids will do given a situation, he knows that even to the nth degree. So I think that I came up with that idea, and I called the radio station. I got online with the guy's name was Greg Kokel, one of my heroes. I love the guy. He's a Calvinist, by the way, and I didn't convince him. But I came up with this idea I thought on my own, and when I told it to him, he said, "Oh no, that's molinism. There was a Catholic theologian who came up with that a long time ago." And I said, "Oh wow, I came up with an actual real theological viewpoint." But anyway, I think the more I thought about it, the more it makes more and more sense that this is the way it works. So I think before the foundation of the world, God in his mind knew every, what they call counterfactuals. Like he knew what would happen in every given circumstance if it happened. Like he could put you in India in 1950 and he knows what you would do, because he knows all your genetics and your mind and everything. So he knows every possible option for every different world that could have existed. And so he actuated this one. So in that sense, we are predestined, those who chose freely to follow and seek God and find him. Those people are freely doing that. But the fact that God started this universe Knowing what would happen is the way that we are predestined, those that are believers. But at the same time, it's true that we freely chose within this universe um, to follow God or not. So everybody's making a free choice, but in essence, he knew what was going to happen in advance. So there's this viewpoint solves a lot of issues, I think. Like I used to think, why should I pray if God knows everything's going to happen? Well, prayer also is something he knew you were going to do. And in a way to glorify himself, he picked a universe where a lot of prayers get answered. So that makes sense to me. So when I pray, I realize that he knew in advance that I was going to pray for that situation. And it might be one of the small reasons he picked this universe to actuate. And also, he picked this universe to actuate because there's certain people in it he wanted in the eternal realm to be at his party, his wedding feast, whatever you want to call it. So there might be universes that have more believers or less evil, but he chose this one because he wanted the people who end up choosing him freely to be the ones that go with him into eternity. So that's one issue. There's also all kinds of other issues that get solved, like God used man to write the Bible, and but he can't. It's illogical for God to make a free being do something. If he makes them do it, they're not free. So how were these men, inspired by the Holy Spirit, able to write a Bible through the books and letters and things that was considered to be inspired by God and supposedly perfect? Well, my view is it's not perfect. It's more like a Polaroid picture of reality, and it has a couple rough edges that we need to use wisdom about. But it was, in all the choices of all the universes, it was a clear enough example of men freely writing down what God wanted. So if you follow that, it makes sense to me that the Bible, though not perfect, is clear message from God, and the stories in there you can glean out the truth. But the Bible's not the answer. God is the answer. So we use the Bible as a guide, but we need to seek God and connect because he's a mind just like we. We have a mind, he has a mind. We need to connect with God. And that's the purpose of the Bible. So, and also the fine-tuning of the universe. I did another podcast or a video on that. And I think what they don't understand is why is it so fine-tuned? I mean, it's way beyond fine-tuned than it needs to be. It's beyond comprehension. So maybe the fine-tuning was because he was picking this specific universe that he wanted certain things to happen. And it kind of explains the fine-tuning in my mind. There's other issues too I'm not going to bore you with, but I think if you look at all the possible worlds that could happen, God knowing all truth and all counterfactual truth, truths that could have happened that didn't, and we look at what he chose to do by actuating this universe, then it kind of reconciles the difference between those scriptures where we are responsible to freely choose our life, but he chose us because he knew what we were going to do, and it's not chronologically prior, it's logically prior. So he chose us knowing what we're going to do, but doesn't mean he caused us to do it. We freely chose because he could have chose another universe where people chose differently. And it also deals with the problem of evil too, because he knew the amount of evil that would be in this universe, but he knew it was temporary compared to eternity, and he knew that the people who chose him for eternity, the evil ratio would go from temporal to eternally. The evil goes down and down and down in its quantity or its effect. So there could have been universes that had more evil and less believers, or ones that had less evil but even less believers, or had the believers he didn't want. He's God. He gets to pick what he wants. So life in itself is a gift. So even if you suffer from evil, it's still better than have never been chosen to exist. So everybody who exists has been blessed with the gift of life, and the gift of being chosen to be in the real universe that got actuated. So I don't know if you follow that. I love it. I love molinism. I think it answers a lot of problems. But that being said, it may not be true. I mean, it's just one answer to this conundrum. So anyway, that's it for today. Talk to you soon.